I said on the last episode I was going to do this episode, and I think we should get to it in this episode. It's the big piece in the Atlantic by Peter Baker Jr. The War at Stanford, and basically this article is like this Stanford fucking apple polisher is like, oh, all the Ivy League universities on the East Coast are getting too much credit for being anti-Semitic. Now let's do an article about the university I go to, and then like everyone, like his dad was just like, Theo's such a wonderful boy. He's whip smart, and Ben Bradley would love his writing if he were still alive. And like this is just like, it's such an obnoxious article, especially in light of the fact that like what's the headline I read this weekend? Like Israel establishes kill zones in Gaza, and it's just the whole thing is like, oh, like people are too angry about this, and it's tearing apart the college that I love going to.
A little dork. I bet he's a male cheerleader.
It was one of the most obnoxious things I've ever seen because it was like his parents, obviously, Susan Glassman and Peter Baker, but also like just assorted other Lifetime media people just talking about what an important precocious young go-getter it was. And it's just like, we talked about it last week, but it literally is just like, I like some of my friends, but I don't like the kids I'm not friends with.
Yeah,
and it's like even if this wasn't in the backdrop of a fucking genocide, them just like taking out every fucking hospital, every bakery, everything. Even if it was about like, I don't know, like whatever bullshit issue before, this has no place in any newspaper. But especially now.
I wonder too, like, is it possible, because I haven't read this, is he really a like school spirit fucking dork? Or is this just, is his actual, precociousness just making a name for himself? Like, is this just like,
I would say,
like, does he care?
It's more the latter than the former, but like, let's judge for ourselves. Let's
take him at his word.
Let's dive into The War at Stanford by Theo Baker for The Atlantic. It begins like this. One of the section leaders from my computer science class, Hazma El-Budali, believes that President Joe Biden should be killed. So a strong opening sentence. I mean, I certainly couldn't argue with that. But he goes, quote, I'm not calling for a civilian to do it, but I think the military should. The 23-year-old Stanford University student told a small group of protesters last month. I'd be happy if Biden was dead. He thinks that Stanford is complicit in what he calls the genocide of Palestinians, and that Biden is not only complicit, but responsible for it. I'm not calling for a vigilante to do it, he later clarified. But I'm saying,
he clarified.
He is guilty of mass murder and should be treated the same way a terrorist with darker skin would be. And we all know terrorists with dark skin are typically bombed and drone striked by American planes. El-Budali has also said that he believes that Hamas's October 7th attack was a justifiable act of resistance, and that he would actually prefer Hamas rule America in place of its current government. Though he later clarified,
college is just for stupid people. Like, this is just stupid people.
Though he later clarified that he didn't. That doesn't mean that Hamas is perfect. When you ask him what his cause is, he answers peace. I switched to a different computer science class. So like I know what he's going for here, but like I would just like to say on the record that everything Hamza El-Budali said was unimpeachable as far as I'm concerned. Because look, Hamas isn't perfect, but neither are the Democrats or the Republicans.
Yeah, do you want to be Trump or not?
Yeah. But I like the line, I switched to a different computer science class.
Yeah. How much is that coming up in computer science?
Well, I mean, like his point is he just wants to study computer science, but unfortunately, Israel killing 30,000 children has made it difficult because people are angry about it.
Is this guy raising his hand?
This is
like talking about
this guy, it's I think it's kept intentionally vague. Like, this is not in a computer science class. This is at a protest at Stanford that this guy was speaking at. But he makes it seem like he's just like, everyone get out your laptops and let's start writing death to the Zionist entity.
Yeah.
So it says here, Israel is 7,500 miles away from Stanford's campus. Thanks for that little factoid there. Where I am a sophomore. But the Hamas invasion and the Israeli counter-invasion have fractured my university, a place typically less focused on geopolitics than on venture capital funding for the latest dorm-based tech startup. Few students would call for Biden's head, I think, but many of the same young people who say they want peace in Gaza don't seem to realize that they are in fact advocating for violence. I mean, I think they're pretty. I think I don't know if they're that confused about it. Whether what they did is justifiable or not is like open.
I don't believe it's justifiable or unjustifiable. It's
But,
just
like,
what happens when you turn up the heat.
Well, I mean, like I would say confidently that what Israel has done is completely unjustified.
Not justifiable.
Yeah, it's not
I
justifiable.
think that's pretty not difficult conclusion to come to.
So yeah, he continues, extremism has swept through classrooms and dorms, and it is becoming normal for students to be harassed and intimidated for their faith, heritage, or appearance. They have been, I mean, I remember I was intimidated for my appearance as a nerd in college all the time. I was singled out for that. It says they have been called perpetrators of genocide for wearing kippahs and accused of supporting terrorism for wearing kiefas. So it's just like fashion police problems on campus.
Yeah.
What kind of hat are you wearing? It can mark you as a friend or foe. But it says the extremism and anti-Semitism at Ivy League universities on the East Coast have attracted so much media and congressional attention that two Ivy presidents have lost their jobs. But few people seem to have noticed the culture war that has taken over our California campus. It's like, this is just like,
who cares?
I believe every president of every university should lose their job.
Is the premise of this article like that it's inherently different when it happens at fucking Stanford?
Yeah, because he's like,
This is East Coast, West Coast beef.
I mean, I think he's saying like, at Princeton and Yale, like they love protesting war, but out here at Stanford, we're too busy making dorm-based app technology that we're hoping to sell.
My God, like
It's Cali vibes.
Yeah, but it says here, for months, two rival groups of protesters separated by a narrow bike path faced off on Stanford's palm-covered grounds. The sit-in to stop genocide encampment was erected by students in mid-October, even before the Israeli troops had crossed into Gaza, to demand that the university divest from Israel and condemn its behavior. Posters were hung equating Hamas with Ukraine and Nelson Mandela. Across from the sit-in, a rival group of pro-Israel students eventually set up the blue and white tent to provide, as one activist put it, a safe space to be a proud Jew on campus. Soon it became the center of its own cluster of tents with photos of Hamas's victims sitting opposite the rubble-ridden images of Gaza and a long and incomplete list of the names of slain Palestinians displayed by the students at the sit-in.
What was in those tents? Lactate? What safety? I hate colleges so much. It's such a weird way to contain actual protest. It's such a weird fucking hamster habit trail for political action.
Yeah.
why isn't this just an email to your grandparents?
Well, this
Here's what I saw at
Literally,
school
it's just
today.
been published in the Atlantic.
It's like, I would rather read like someone's cousin describing a movie they saw than this. This is so shit. Like, what is your fucking point? Why did this need to exist? If I was his grandparents, I would be like, shut up.
I mean,
I wouldn't. If I was his grandparents, I wouldn't finish this article.
Yeah. No, this is one of the most pointless things ever committed to language.
If I was his grandparents, I'd be like, I'm sorry that happened, or congratulations.
Yeah.
But it says here,
Here's $10. Go see a Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, this is another like little like glimpse as to like the mentality behind this article. Stanford has a policy barring overnight camping, but for months didn't enforce it.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Call the press. Call Woodward and Bernstein. The overnight camping policy is selectively enforced. Holy shit!
Yeah.
If you were my kid and you told me that, like out of breath, I would sell you to the circus.
Hey,
Shut the fuck up.
If you want to get rid of them, just invite like 3 homeless people there. They'll clear it out.
It says here, we've had protests in the past, Richard Saller, the university's interim president, told me in November about the environment and apartheid, protests about the environment, apartheid, Vietnam, but they didn't pit students against each other the way this conflict has.
Yeah, students have never disagreed. If everything, it was a big Coca-Cola commercial, everyone holding hands.
I mean, they did kill some Vietnam protesters on an American university in the 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the National Guard weren't actually students there.
Well,
But
what happened with the overnight camping policy? Thanks, Dave.
That's the most important.
Maybe
thing.
they were enforcing the camping policy.
yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, like Felix, like if I could like attempt to seriously answer your question about why this article, why this email to Nana and Pep, why this is getting published in the Atlantic, and I think it is because of like the massive and undeniable weight of public opinion among people under the age of 30 about Israel, and I think outlets like the Atlantic need to keep promoting these mother boys
I always get this way before Mother Boy.
Oh, God. It's Mother Boy already?
to give their readership
Right.
the impression that young people are not fully swayed by like Palestinian propaganda or whatever.
Right. It's like it's a new form of Hizbara where it's like we can't be like explicitly pro-Israel anymore. We can sort of sneakily imply that the entire Palestinian movement is tarnished by anti-Semitism without saying it outright. But
Right.
also make it so like that the default position, the normal position is just like, hey, it's 7,500 miles away. I don't care. It doesn't affect us. Which like ignores the massive amount of Israeli lobbying, the presence of Israel in all aspects of American public life,
Yeah.
in the security state. This can only function on the idea that like Israel is just like another country.
Yeah, the
That
call
they
is coming from
behave-
inside
Yeah,
the house. Like, don't pretend that it's fucking. I still fucking can't stand. Like, again, if I was his grandparents and I got an email this long, even if I was like a racist Zionist, I would regard it with the same observational kind of distance as when like my cousins spent an hour explaining Pokemon to me. Like, it's just
Yeah.
so like, shut up. Even if I was racist, I would say, shut up.
Yeah, it's going through. It's so belabored to arrive at this stance of like, well, you know, it maybe you know campuses shouldn't talk about it. It's like an Ivy League version of those posts where people are like, I'm having a beer and being normal.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well then can we like stop sending Israel money and weapons?
Yeah.
Like if it's just going to be like, hey, I don't care.
But all of this avoids the economics of it. Like, that's what campus politics do. It's just like this big red herring. It's like, just what is the budget of this university?
Probably like the equivalent to like some nations that are like
it's
yeah.
insane. And being like, all right, should we have a say in the budget?
Right.
Should we have a say who's on campus? Like, maybe we've kicked out ROTC. We've decided certain people aren't allowed on campus to lobby for certain things. I think it's fair to say a lot of Israel groups constitute essentially like a soft conscription campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty like, just like, I dare you to just like try and like reorganize the budget around like not fucking supporting Israel instead of like doing this like loser nerd shit.
This is like, yeah, it's like the ship in the bottle kind of protest. you know?
Yeah, it's literally, the universities are intended at this point to contain actual like political action.
If this is just like a regular country that's 7,500 miles away, surely it should be no problem to ban a foreign nation from lobbying on campus,
Yeah.
right?
And again,
That should be fine, right?
It's soft conscription. It's like, it's militaristic. If ROTC can't be on there, I don't see why the fuck Israel's allowed to be on
Yeah,
there.
a foreign nation.
Going on here, it says, when the university finally said the protest tents had to be removed, students responded by accusing Saller of suppressing their right to free speech. This is probably the last charge he is expected to face. Saller once served as a provost at the University of Chicago, which is known for holding itself to a position of strict institutional neutrality so that its students can freely explore ideas for themselves. Saller has a lifelong belief in First Amendment rights, but that conviction in impartial college government does not align with Stanford's behavior in recent years. Despite the fact that many students seem largely uninterested in the headlines before this year, Stanford's administrative leadership has often taken positions on political issues and events, such as the Paris Climate Conference and the murder of George Floyd. After Russia invaded Ukraine, Stanford's Hoover Tower was lit up in blue and yellow, and the school released a statement in solidarity. When we first met a week before October 7th, I asked Saller about this. Did Stanford have a moral duty to denounce the war in Ukraine, for example, or the ethnic cleansing of Uyghur Muslims in China? On international political issues, no, he said. That's not a responsibility for the university as a whole, as an institution. I asked Saller why he had changed tack on Israel and not Nagorno-Karabakh. We don't feel as though we should be making statements on every war crime and atrocity, he told me. This felt like a statement in and of itself. So it's like, I think it's telling here that like the guy that he's mostly talking to in this article is just the university president.
Yeah.
It's also funny and telling that he said, when I first talked to him the week before October 7th, like what like sophomore at Stanford gets direct access to the president just on a random weekday.
Especially like Stanford.
Yeah.
I think he wrote some other article that exposed some Stanford professors' malfeasance that got a lot of burns. So I think he's got the ear of
He's
the
got some
administration.
kind of,
yeah.
Look, I never talked to my university president, nor did I want to.
No.
I didn't even know who the fuck his name was.
I think his name was Mort. I don't know.
When we met back in November, I tried to get Saller to open up about his experience running an institution in turmoil. And like Stanford is not in turmoil because, like as you said, Amber, they have an endowment that's probably like the equivalent of like some European countries.
36.5 billion, which puts them just above El Salvador in terms of GDP.
Yeah. It says, what is it like to know that so many students seem to believe that he, a mild-mannered 71-year-old classicist who swing dances with his anthropologist wife, is a warmonger? Saller was more candid than I expected, perhaps more candid than any prominent university president had been. We sat in the same conference room as we had in September. The weather hadn't really changed. Yet I felt like...
Oh my God, shut the fuck up! Who cares?
How could he be a
What do you eat for breakfast that day?
How could you be a warmonger? He does the Lindy Hop.
He said, yet I felt like I was sitting in front of a different person. He was hunched over and looked exhausted, and his voice broke when he talked about the loss of life in Gaza and Israel and the fact that we're caught up in it. A capable administrator with decades of experience, Saller seemed almost at a loss. It's been kind of a roller coaster, to be honest.
Is this a red carpet interview? What the fuck is this? It's like,
You should be interviewing Conor McGregor about fucking the Roadhouse. People tend to blame the campus wars on two villains, dithering administrators and radical student activists. But colleges have always had dithering administrators and radical student activists. To my mind, it's the average students who have changed. Elite universities attract a certain kind of student, the overachieving striver who has won all the right accolades for all the right activities. It's such a surprise that the kids who are trained in the constant pursuit of perfect scores think they have to look at the world like a series of multiple choice questions with clearly right or wrong answers.
I'd prefer that than looking at the world as an essay question, which you are doing.
Yeah.
You're doing right now.
yeah, he's blue booking this shit.
Oh my
or that they
God.
think they can gamify a political cause in the same way they ace a standardized test.
Oh, you are gamify like this is a resume padding.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like as you'll see in the next paragraph, like as I said earlier, I think this is like the thrust of this article is to assure his parents and grandparents that like the student activism of like people who are against the war or pro-Palestine, that it's just sort of like trendy and like they don't really believe it. They're just sort of pretending to because it's cool.
There should be a show where they subject this guy to different batting cages. And they increase the speed of the ball every week.
By the way, the people who say you're just into this cause because you want to be cool are the least cool people on earth. So what he's saying might be true for some people. Let's say for a few people, they're bandwagoneers.
Sure.
What does that make you?
Yeah.
A big virgin dork.
He goes, it's not that there isn't real anger and anxiety over what is happening in Gaza. There is, and justifiably so. I know that among the protesters are many people who are deeply connected to this issue, but they are not the majority. What really activates the crowds now seems less like a principled devotion to Palestine or to pacifism than a desire for collective action, to fit in by embracing the fashionable cause of the moment, as if a centuries-old conflict in which both sides have stolen and killed could ever be a simple matter of right and wrong.
Why
Now-
does this-
now- now he's at
Well,
least
it's not a
saying-
century
Why
old.
does this get to be an article that he's just imagining what's in the minds of everyone at the protest? How is that a premise for anything? There's nothing, you can't do anything where you just imagine the mental state of like a few dozen people you've never spoken to.
Well, he found one like edgelord at his computer science class, and he's like trying to get the reader to extrapolate everything from that.
I'm just skipping ahead here. It says, the real story at Stanford is not about the malicious actors who endorse sexual assault and murder as forms of resistance, but about those who passively enable them because they believe their side can do no wrong. You don't have to understand what you're arguing for in order to argue for it. You don't have to be able to name the river or the sea under a discussion to chant from the river to the sea.
Oh,
Okay,
fucking
the Mediterranean and
geography,
the-
bitch.
The Mediterranean and the Jordan. Can I weigh in now?
Also,
Can I
I'm
weigh
sorry.
in now, Theo?
It's an apocryphal fucking story, but they've said, I mean, like, it's probably apocryphal. I don't know. I can't confirm it, but there's like a thing where I think it was during Iraq, like the first 2 years or something, where they went around asking Americans, could they find Iraq, I think Afghanistan, and maybe North Korea on the map? And the people who were more likely to be able to were the people also more likely
Yes.
to want to invade.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
trust people who know geography.
Yeah. One of the highest sources, like one of the highest demographic groups that most supported the Vietnam War while it was going on were college-aged males.
Yeah.
Who were like educated, and because you have to
Because
be
they weren't going
you
most
have to
of
be
the time.
educated to
Yeah.
be that fucking stupid.
They could usually
Whereas, being
They
able
went
to
to
being able to
college.
find the Gaza Strip on a map is like less impressive to me than to know that it exists and people are dying there and to be like, oh, that's wrong.
Well, and it's also just like it was just way easier for them to get out of the draft.
Yeah. It goes, this kind of obliviousness explains how one of my friends, a gay activist, can justify Hamas's actions, even though it would have the two of us, an outspoken queer person and a Jewish reporter, killed in a heartbeat.
I will support anyone who promises to end your writing career. I don't care if they kill you. I don't care if they chop your fucking hands off. Anything to prevent this from happening again. This is the real never again.
Yes.
I never want to hear this article ever again.
A similar mentality can exist on the other side. I have heard students insist on the absolute righteousness of Israel, yet seem uninterested in learning anything about what life is like in Gaza. I can tell you what life is like in Gaza. It's
pretty.
short.
We have pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nasty, brutish, and short.
Yeah. I'm familiar with, this is a great line. I'm familiar with the pull of achievement culture. After all, I'm the product of
Familiar with the poll.
I fell in love with Stanford as a 7-year-old lying on the floor of an East Coast library and picturing all the cool technology those West Coast geniuses were dreaming up. I cried when I was accepted. I spent the next few months scrolling through the course catalog, giddy with anticipation.
Holy
I wanted to
shit.
learn everything.
How many swirlies would it take to re-educate him?
This guy should be conscripted into going to one of Diddy's parties. I
Well,
want
here's
Diddy.
the thing too: if he like fucking supports what Israel is doing, join up.
Yeah.
I would love it if Diddy traumatized him so bad that he can never write again.
All right. Well, I'll stop traumatizing you, Felix. I just want to read two more things from this article. But my frustration with the conflict on campus has little to do with my own identity as in a high achieving Jewish kid.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That's totally.
Yeah.
That's just completely irrelevant.
Across many conversations and hours of formal interviews I conducted for this article, I've encountered a persistent anti-intellectual streak. I've watched many of my classmates treat death so cavalierly that they can protest as a pregame to a party. Indeed, 2 parties at Stanford were reported to the university this fall for allegedly making people say "fuck Israel" or "free Palestine" to get in the door.
He's just mad about not getting invited to parties. He's just saying that.
What are people supposed to do after a protest? Like wear an armband of mourning and just like sit Shiva, not look in a mirror for a week? What the fuck are you talking about?
And this is great. A spokesman for the university said it was unable to confirm the facts of what had occurred, but that it had met with students involved in both parties to make clear Stanford's non-discrimination policy applies to parties.
Also, again, real quick, like he said he was done what, hours of interviews?
Yeah.
Where's a single other voice besides this like one person?
Yeah, the university administrator. And also, when he published this article, he was like, I spent the last 6 months writing this article. When were you going to class, dude?
Yeah.
Do your goddamn homework.
How did this take 6 months?
Yeah.
There's no one he's talking to. He didn't even talk to the guy who said the stuff, who I bet he's fucking misquoted or very selectively quoted or whatever. Or the guy was hungover. It's college. I love college. But like, why wouldn't you want to talk to that guy? Like at the very least being like, what do you say? Like Hamas? What do you mean? Like that would be a good question to ask someone.
I would say anything to get him to stop talking to me.
Yeah.
Like I would take any position, anything.
That's what that whole intro scene read as to me, is this Theo guy badgering this guy, being like, oh, so you think Hamas should be the government of America? And him being like, you know what? Yeah, fuck it. Hamas should be the government of America.
Yeah, so like someone getting frustrated in the middle of a conversation. You're absolutely right. Like it's just completely, it's made up. It's woke toddler for like fucking right-wing Zionist dorks.
Like depending on the context or the time of day Theo Baker talked to me, I would say either I rock with Hitler, I'm an AKP supporter, I like Modi.
Yeah, whatever. Anything to make a fuck off.
I think Pedro Castillo, I was the 8% of Peruvians who approved of Pedro Castillo by the end. I don't care anything to make you stop.
All right, I'll stop with just like one last sentence from this article. As a friend emailed me not long ago.
I have a friend, I swear.
As a friend emailed me not long ago, a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary from such unreason has become a factory for it.
Oh my
it's
god!
not.
Oh my god! Then go to math club. Who cares? What the
Or
fuck
just
are you
transfer universities, man. Like,
Go to University of Arizona.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
there you go.
no one knows what any of this shit is there. Okay, go there. Like, there's nothing you can learn about. Right, you are genetically an annoying and bad writer because you have no soul. You can never say anything that's interesting. The moment you say something that is interesting, the Mahdi will return. It will be the mark of the end of time. It doesn't matter where you go. You could go to college in Kazakhstan. It wouldn't matter. You will produce the same quality of article.
Well, the entire thing is just about college. He's not talking about like Gaza.
Yeah, this
He's
is
not
just
talking about what's happening to Palestinians
Yeah.
right now. Like, it's like, hey, you wonder why they did that shit? Wouldn't you have wouldn't you start from that premise at the very least to say, like, is this reasonable? Is this not reasonable? Like, he kind of like just skipped the biggest part of the conversation, which is the genocide part.
Yeah. Well, he says the so-called genocide. I mean, he disputes that categorization. But yeah, I mean, I guess to summarize this article, I mean, I just think like this is part of this ongoing bargaining process among liberals who consider themselves good Democrats, but like, still love Israel. And it's this bargaining process where like they know they can't come outright and say, I think it's good that we're annihilating the people of Gaza or annihilating Palestine. So they have to find like this endless receding horizon of complexity and nuance.
Yeah.
To like,
The reason this took 6 months is because it became less and less fucking defensible what Israel was doing. He kept having to rewrite it so that he sounded more balanced against the most horrifying thing that's happening right now.
Yeah. And like, and yeah, like I said, like, and also like this attempt to kind of like wish away both like the reality of the horror of what's happening, but the reality of people's strong feelings about it. And the idea that like this is an issue in which like we are not going to like find some sort of resolution in which both sides will be happy to like engage in reasoned debate over.
Stop going to college. In conclusion, stop going to college.
I would love to see all Deadliest Warrior come back, but every week it's a different Deadliest Warrior taking on Theo Baker. I would love to see Theo Baker versus the Taliban, Theo Baker versus the RA, Theo Baker versus ATA, which we never saw. Steven Seagal.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be fine with him like versus the IDF. They're not going to be nice to him either.
Here's like this. I'd like to see an episode. I'd like to see Theo Baker versus a real job.
Yeah. After this shit done, you gonna be wishing for a motherfucking W-2. Yo ass finna be as divided as campus.